Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley Williams. I'm a technical accounting manager here at LeaseQuery. And what I want to do today is walk through one of our free tools. So we're going to look at the GASB 87 lease identifier. I want to explain how the tool works, what some of the inputs are, and what the outputs are as well that you'll get from the tool. So how you get to this tool, the GASB 87 lease identifier, is come to leasequery.com, go here to the resources tab, scroll down to free tools. And when we come here to free tools, we'll scroll down a little bit and it's right here at the top, this GASB 87 lease identifier. So this is going to allow us and help us to determine if the contract that we have is a lease under GASB 87. So if it is in scope for this new standard. So when we open up, it's going to walk us through yes or no decisions and questions to help us decide if this is in fact in scope under GASB 87. So as we go through, I'll explain a little bit of what's happening. But the first question here is the underlying asset considered an intangible asset, a biological asset, or inventory? So when we have a contract and we look at what asset is in that contract, do we have, say, a patent or a copyright, or is this for timber or living animals? Maybe it's for cows, right? Something like that. Well, then that actually would not be in scope for 87. That's not going to be a lease under 87. So if we say yes, you'll see here the system's going to say, okay, well, we know the results, we know what this is under 87, so give us your information, we'll send you an email and let you know based off of these questions what the assessment is. Now we're going to go back and say, hey, this is not underlying asset considered intangible asset. We'll say, hey, we have ability. Okay, well, let's keep going. We'll say no there. The next question is the agreement a supply contract? And again, you always see explanations here. So is this a power purchase agreement or take or pay agreement? Well, we'll say no, this is a building for or this is a lease for something else. Well, okay, perfect. No. Next question then is the underlying asset financed with outstanding conduit debt? Well, maybe, I don't know what conduit debt means. Well, you'll see here again, a definition based off of how GASB defines it of what conduit debt is. And so you can make the determination is if you're financing that contract with this conduit debt. So we'll say no again. If it was yes, again, it'd be not in scope under 87. So we'll keep going here. The next piece is, does your agreement meet the GASB's definition of a service concession arrangement? Now that falls under GASB 60, if that's a service concession arrangement. But you open this up here, and we pulled that from GASB 60 to help you determine if that in fact is a service concession arrangement. So you can go through this 4-part test here. So we've gone through this and said, no, it's actually not a service concession arrangement. Okay, perfect. We'll click next. The next question here, does the contract transfer ownership of the underlying asset to the lessee by the end of the lease term? So do you get that asset at the end of the term? Maybe it's a vehicle after 4 years, you actually get to keep the asset, keep the vehicle, or maybe it's a bargain purchase option, right? Whatever it may be here. Does that transfer ownership at the end of the lease term? If we were to say yes, it's going to ask another question, because you'll see over here, there's 2 parts of the transfer of ownership under GASB 87. If there's transfer of ownership of the leased asset and it does not contain any termination options. So if we say, yes, this does have transfer option or transfer ownership, but it also has a termination option. Well, then we can click next and it'll keep going because it's saying, okay, well, this still could be in scope under 87. If we were to say no, or say yes here, but then no, it does not have a termination option, it's going to let us know. We'll send you the results, but based off my knowledge, that's not going to be a lease. So we'll come back here and say, no, it does not transfer ownership. So the next question here then, does the contract transfer control? Maybe not ownership, but during the life of the lease or life of the term, does it transfer control? Well, again, what does that mean at 87? You'll see here, 2 key factors. Do you have the right to obtain the present service capacity? So let's stick with a vehicle. Can I use that vehicle when I want? Can I use it right now? Also, I have the right to determine the nature and manner of use. Well, can I drive that vehicle over state lines? Can I go to a different state, or does it have to stay within, within the city limits, something like that, right? So if you don't have all those control of the lease, then it's not going to be in scope. But we'll say, yes, we do have control here. So we go to the next example then. Is this an underlying asset non-financial in nature? So is it land, buildings, vehicle, equipment? We'll say, yes, it is. It's not a financial asset. Okay. Well, then the next question is, does the contract specify a period of time in which the entity can control the underlying asset? We've determined we have control, but does it also specify a certain period of time when we have that control? And this is where it gets a little gray, because under GASB 87, GASB is actually the only one that has this distinction that it does not have to be uninterrupted control. So you'll see here as an example, maybe the government has a 5-year agreement to use a gym, let's say a gym at a church, but you only get that 3 days a week. So you'll have control, but only for 3 days. Well, that still fits the period of time test, because it doesn't have to be uninterrupted. You have the control, but in those 3 days, the key question then is, in those 3 days, do you have the control, the present service capacity? Do you have can determine the manner and nature of use of that asset? So some interesting points here to think about, but we'll say, yes, we do have a specific period of time in that contract. The last question then is, do you have an exchange or exchange-like transaction happening here? A lot of times in GASB, we see situations where it's a dollar lease. Well, that's not an exchange-like transaction where which the value is exchanged through related may not be quite equal, right? So you have to determine if it's, the exchange-like transaction. If I'm getting a parcel of land for $1, it's not really a fair exchange, right? Usually there's some type of arrangement that, if you're able to grow crops, then the rent will increase down the line, something like that. But the idea is, do you have a true exchange or exchange-like transaction? So we'll say, yeah, we pay $100 a month for this lease. We have a reasonable exchange transaction. So we'll say yes. Well, this is the last question. So now it's going to say, okay, well, we've got all the questions from you. We'll now send you an email. So you simply fill in your information here. The system will then send you an email, and I've pulled that up here. So here's what that looks like. It'll be from info@LeaseQuery. It says, based off on your answers, it doesn't seem likely you have a lease under GASB 87. Now, I answered different answers than I just did here in the example, but I just want to show you what that example will look like here. So based off of your answers, the system will make a determination and send you an email like this. So very, very easy, very helpful. You can use this as evidence in that audit, but great information to have for your leases to help determine, if they are going to be in scope under GASB 87 or not.